Every business starts somewhere. An idea, a risk, the work to make it real. This is built from scratch. Conversations with people who started small, learned fast, and built something of their own.
Welcome to Built from Scratch Podcast. I am your host, Donald Dunn. Welcome to the show. Today's guest is Scott Maderer, an expert in helping people transition from simply working a job to truly living their calling. Scott specializes in mindset and behavior change, guiding individuals to get out of their own way and align their time, talent, and finances with what matters most. A certified DISC communication coach, he's been helping leaders and professionals create purposeful lives since 2011. Let's welcome Scott to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Scott?
It's going fantastic. It's so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we dive into it? We'll start from the beginning here. You help people move from working to living their calling. What's really the difference?
So let's back up a little bit. I think one of the big mistakes a lot of people make is they equate calling with what they do for a living. And The truth is we kind of have two different words. And in English, we use them as if they mean the same thing, but they actually mean dramatically different things. And so one of those words is career, and the other is vocation.
Okay.
So let me unpack that a little bit. The word career actually comes from a root word that means cart. It's something that gets you from point A to point B, something that just moves you along in your journey. If you think about it nowadays, we think of your career as the thing you get paid to do, right? The thing you do to make money. But we equate that, and a lot of times people will even say my vocation is, and what they'll say is their career, the thing they get paid to do. But vocation comes from the same root word as vocal or vocalization. The root word is actually vocalis, which means to be called.
Okay.
Well, first off, in my definition, if you're going to be called, there has to be a caller. That's kind of what being called means. So I'm a person of faith. I believe that caller is God, but I don't care what name you want to put on it, design, universe, what you're built for, God, whatever label you want to put on it. There's something outside of you, bigger than you, driving you forward. That's what vocation means.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, your vocation is bigger than your career. Your career is what I get paid for in this particular moment in time. My vocation, though, it's bigger than that. It has more depth than that. Your vocation is what I would call your calling. And your calling, how you're designed, how you're built, how you show up in the world, it should show up in your career, but it should also show up in how you're a dad and how you're a husband and how you're a mom or how you're a child or how whatever. Everything you do, how you get up in the morning should reflect something about how you're built and how you're designed and your passion, whatever fancy name you want to give it this week. That's the vocation. That's the calling. So it is partly in your career, but it's bigger than that. So when I say moving from your career to your calling or moving from what you do to what you're meant to do, part of that is recognizing that you're never going to find the one job, that fully fulfills everything that who and what you're built and what you're designed to be. Because I think that happens to a lot of the times. We chase the perfect job. And the problem is there is no perfect job.
Right.
Because a job is just one small part of your overall life. And so it's really pulling back and looking at how are you put together as a whole integral person, and how does your calling show up in all of the different components of your life, including, but not limited to, your career.
Yeah. I really like the way you put that. And I want to unpack this just a little bit because there was a lot that you just said there. One of the things that I agree with you is there is something bigger than all of us. And there's a reason why faith has one of the pillars of your life. It's because you have to have faith in something bigger than you. And if you don't, you're going to be unbalanced and you're going to have issues. And I have learned since I left the military that what you think you want to do isn't always your calling, right?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
You know, the way you put that, I always thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That's what I thought I wanted. You know, I didn't care what it was. And then circumstances happened when I got out. I couldn't find a job. So I created a job and I owned a trucking company and off I went, right? Now I'm an entrepreneur. That's exactly what I wanted to do. I'm happy. I was not happy. And, you know, I did not like it. I mean, I enjoyed the work sometimes. I enjoyed the money, but I didn't really feel like I was fulfilling. And since then, I have now continued with what I like. I opened up a media company, Barracks Media Incorporated, and I do it full time. I make a lot less money, and I love it. I'm happy because this does feel like a calling to me. This has led to nonprofit work. This has led to, you know, hearing people's stories, meeting new people, and it fulfills me. And so I do see the difference in what you're saying.
Let me ask you a question, if you don't mind. So you're still an entrepreneur.
Yep.
Okay. You were an entrepreneur with the trucking company. You're an entrepreneur now with the media company. What do you see as the big difference between the two? Because, you know, you originally said, I just want to be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
Then you found out you were an entrepreneur and you weren't fulfilled by it. So what's different about the media company? Why is that fulfilling to you?
Because the calling wasn't being the entrepreneur. If somebody else owned Barracks Media and I could still do podcasting, I could still help people with, you know, self-help type videos or with the nonprofit that I have built. You know, right now we help veterans going from the military into music careers. We've got an art therapy program coming. That's where the calling, that's where the fulfillment comes from. It isn't the entrepreneur part. It was about giving back and being able to help, especially staying around the veteran community. I'm very tight in that community and I do a lot of work there. And that's what is fulfilling to me. So, you know, if it wasn't the entrepreneur part that was fulfilling, that came out of a necessity so that I could do what I wanted to do full time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's part of why I wanted to ask that and kind of unpack that, is because notice something again, when you thought about an entrepreneur, right? You actually were thinking about it. You even said it. You said, I made a job. That's how you described it. You made a career. You made a thing to make money.
Yep.
But you didn't really look at what's the purpose behind it. You know, why do I care if I make money or not? How do I want to make money? What am I actually trying to accomplish? And yeah, money comes too, but it's not the money. It's the purpose, the passion for you pouring back into the veteran community is important. I'd be willing to bet you there's other ways you could do that than just the media company that would still give you fulfillment.
Yeah.
But if you went too far away from that veteran and serving others and building people up and that kind of thing, now all of a sudden you'd feel disconnected again.
Yep. 100%. You know, and for me, you know, the business side of that came out of necessity for the nonprofit. You know, and that's really the only reason why a for-profit company was even created. But at the end of the day, it gave me a place, a platform, and the fact that we are able to be sitting here talking today and people are going to be learning from the things that you're saying is, in my opinion, is truly amazing. That's what I love about the podcasting community.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it again, you know, just to be clear for folks listening, it's not make money, don't make money. It's not have a nonprofit, have a business. It's not any of that. It's do the thing and the money should serve the thing, not the thing serves the money. You know, 100%. What makes it a career is when it serves the money.
Yep.
The money is the result. The money is the goal. The money is the outcome. What makes it a calling is when the thing is served, you know, by everything else. It becomes central. It becomes the driving force. Because again, I think it's something that we really mess up in our heads, and it ends up making us chase a lot of things. We end up chasing someone else's dream we end up chasing, living the life that everyone else. Oh, you're successful because XYZ and you're going, yeah, I don't feel successful. This stinks. Why, and yet everyone else is telling you what a wonderful success you have. And you're going, yeah, but it feels empty.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know about you, but I always think to myself, I hope I don't have an appointment with the doctor that is only a doctor because his mom wanted him to be a doctor or her to be a doctor, right? That is the doctor I don't want an appointment with. I want an appointment with the doctor where him or her, they're sitting there going, this is it. This is what fills me up. This is what I love to do because of all these other things. And it's my dream and it's my passion and it's my thing, not I'm doing it because I make money or I'm doing it because my mom wanted me to be a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. If it was about money for me, I would have stayed driving truck, and the reality is I actually had a guest on this morning, one of my early interviews, and he really had a unique idea. He came up with this, what he called the X factor, right? And one side of the X is everything that you're passionate about, everything you love, whether it's golfing or biking or whatever, right? And then it's what is it that you can do to make a living, and where those two things cross is that X factor, right? That's where your niche is, and it really made me think, because I thought I wanted to retire to get out of the military, and since I've been out, I have forced myself back into that community because I miss it. And the reality was, I was just burned out from what we were doing. What I should have done was try to do something else in the military that would have fulfilled that. And that's what you're talking about right there is finding that passion and that drive and not worrying about the rewards for it. The reward is you get to do it.
There in the Japanese culture, there's a term called ikigai, I think is how you pronounce it, or ikigi. I've heard it pronounced different ways, and honestly, I'm not sure which is right. But it's IKIGAI, and the idea is, think of like a Venn diagram, right? The ones with the circles that overlap. So you've got what do you love? You've got what the world needs. You've got what can you be paid for? And then there's what are you good at, right? So what do you love? What does the world need? What can you be paid for? And what are you good at? And if you think about where all of those things overlap, they say that's like the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Because any two of those can overlap and it's still good. It's like, so like, what do you love with what the world needs is like your mission.
Yeah.
What you love with what you're good at is kind of your passion. But if nobody wants to pay you for it, it's great to have that as a passion. Maybe that's your hobby, but that's it's okay that that's not what you get paid to do. That you don't necessarily want to force that to be money, when there might be something else that you can do that's kind of akin to it that you also can be paid for and that the world needs. So it's when all four of those kind of overlap. And again, it's not necessarily that one specific job or career hits all of those, but what you do need is all of those need to be in your life.
Yes.
Some things can overlap two of them or three of them, and other things may overlap all four, but at the end of the day, I need all of those in my life. I need to be able to feed what I love. I need to be able to feed what I'm good at. I need to be able to be paid for something, and I need to be able to do something that the world needs to really be kind of fulfilled and happy.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, let me ask you this then. When people achieve that, right? So let's say we find that sweet spot and we get there. Why is it that so many high performers feel stuck even after achieving that? It's like they still want more, or they still aren't finding the source from it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different reasons, probably as many different reasons as there are people. But I'll kind of tell you some of the big ones that I've seen show up over the years. One is they actually never stop long enough to realize that they're feeding their soul. And what I mean by that is, again, they get so locked into chasing what everyone else, what the world, what the culture, with their parents, whatever, their spouse, sometimes even, or family, people that mean well. They're usually not, it's not like naysayers. I'm not talking about people that are trying to pull them down and jealous
Right.
of their success. I'm talking about people that really care about them, but they're trying to tell them there's all this other stuff. And that's really what you want. That's really what success is. That's what successful looks like. And so they almost get fooled into chasing the wrong thing.
That makes sense.
And it usually comes about because they haven't done the work to sit down and go, this is what I want. This is what I'm built to do. This is what success is to me. Like literally asking people, what does success mean to you? And the first answer most people give is something about money. And yet when I push them and dig deeper and keep saying, well, why is that important to you? Well, why is that? You kind of turn into the inner toddler, why? Think about your 3-year-old, right? And you keep asking why. And eventually what it gets down to isn't money. That was their knee-jerk response. And it's not really what they think of as success.
Right.
And so it's helping people dig into that. That's probably the number one reason. And then the number two reason that I see, so one is just kind of letting other people put onto you what your definition of success is, and therefore you're chasing the wrong thing. The other thing that I see happen is people kind of get into a position where they allow voices in that are those naysayers. They don't build a community around them of people that can hold them accountable, but can do it in a good way. It's not out of jealousy. It's not out of anger. It's not out of competition. It's out of love. It's out of abundance. It's out of really, being a community that cares for that person.
Right.
If they don't build that board of directors, that a coach, a mastermind, there's lots of different ways, a mentor, there's lots of different ways you can do it. But if they don't put that kind of counsel in place where there are some people that are able to speak into those components of their life with authority and with love and call them out on it, then they get lost because they're in their own head. And the problem is, no matter who you are, you don't know what you don't know. You only know what you do know, and having people around you that can go, hey, Donald, have you thought of this? And it may be something you thought of and it may not be, but just inviting that counsel in to challenge you. And I've seen a lot of folks that build success, build their passion, build their dream, but then drift away from it because they don't have people in there to help them see those boundaries and kind of call them out in a good way when they're crossing it. And so they start making bad decisions, and they don't have the bumpers up. They don't have the guardrails up. So that's probably the two biggest buckets that I've seen over the years.
Yeah. I was sitting here thinking, listening to you, and I think a lot of that kind of explains what, my next question was going to be, why is it that a lot of times, we call it midlife crisis, but that burnout stage kind of comes at about that stage of life. Right. And it makes sense because as you're younger, you get that more influence noise on the outside. And if it's not positive, or if they're leading you in the wrong direction, say a family member or spouse or somebody that thinks they're giving you the advice that's what's best for them, well, then you spend your life changing or chasing that. And by the time you hit that midlife and realize this was not the path I was supposed to be on, and you make that right turn to get over onto Highway 2, and next thing you know, you're tired. You're kind of burned out. And then you get a little bit older, say, my age or whatever, in your 50s, and then you start finding that path. And I think you pick up a little bit of that steam again, that passion and that desire once you get put on that path. And I think a lot of that comes from spirit too, what it is that is bigger than you that we talked about earlier, that inner peace that you find when you finally reach, that peace in your life, that passion and the things that you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of things that can happen in midlife too. Sometimes it's all of a sudden you feel the clock ticking, the kids are getting out of the house, that you're looking up and you're going, oh man, what have I accomplished? I haven't accomplished all the things that I thought I should have accomplished by now. I'm not where I thought I should be or would be, kind of thing. And there's almost, those regrets. It can be like you said, you've been influenced to go a certain direction, and now you look up and go, boy, I climbed the ladder and I didn't even have the ladder on the right wall. What are you talking about? What have I accomplished? I didn't build the right thing. All of those things can happen. And again, it's not, I want to be careful and not put a value statement on it, like it's a good thing or a bad thing, because it isn't. It's just a thing. It's, if you've made mistakes and you've built the ladder and you've climbed the wrong ladder, guess what? You can move the ladder. It's doable. Now, is it going to be hard? Is there going to be challenges? Is it going to be work? Sure, but you can do it. I've worked with people that are in their 80s and suddenly launching a business for the first time in their life or something, because that they realized this was their dream and their passion project, and they're doing it. And they're like, I'm too old to do this. It's like, are you still breathing? It's like, because if you are, you're not done yet. Maybe tomorrow, but not today. And yet we forget that. And so we end up, and I've seen people do that, where they end up living with the regrets because changing is so hard. They built up so much inertia and so much baggage and so much those past decisions. And, and again, I'm not saying go buy the red sports car and, all the typical midlife crisis things, right? Go buy a red sports car and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Corvette on the, go do that and, divorce your wife and move away from your kids. And, all of that's kind of the stereotypical thing that people have in their head. And that's not what I'm talking about, but I am talking about at any point in time, whether you're 12, 20, 40, 60, 80, 102, you can always ask yourself that question of, what do I really want? What do I want to be when I grow up? What I wanted this next phase of my life to look like? What needs to be different? And you can do that hard work and start building a road towards that different.
Yeah.
Because I think all too often what ends up happening is a lot of times people only change when the pain is great enough that the pain of the same outweighs the pain of the change, right? That's the old expression of, you're never going to change until, well, here's the thing. You don't have to wait until it hurts that bad. You can actually change before that. If you're really smart, you will,
Yeah.
It's kind of I always tell people, smart people learn from their mistakes. Really smart people learn from other people's mistakes,
Right.
And that's the difference, right? But we don't let ourselves do it. We don't open ourselves up to it because we feel like, there's all of this baggage that keeps us from moving along. And again, that's where what I was talking about earlier with the community, coaches, mentors, masterminds, these sorts of things, finding people that can pour into you and kind of help you see that path forward is probably one of the single most important things that you can do to really change before you have to change kind of situation.
Right. That's a good segue into the next topic that I was going to ask is, one of those things that do you think that holds people back from making the change, even when they realize this is not what I was supposed to be doing. But let's say they're successful at it, that, they made a career, not a calling from it, but they made a career from it. And then they get to that point and they start looking over there at the road that they wanted to be on. How much do you think ego actually is the blocker that blocks them from getting on to that correct path?
I'll label it a different word. It's pride. And I believe the root of pretty much every sin is pride, at some level. It's the arrogance of, I can do this on my own. I don't need anyone's help. I got this, whatever phrasing you want to use. Ego to me is really just, that's pride speaking. It's showing up and saying that if I change, I'm going to admit that I was wrong. If anyone knows I'm wrong, it's also imposter syndrome is another version of it. It's this feeling of, oh, they're going to figure out that I really don't know what I'm doing. Dude, nobody knows what they're doing. It's like, I've talked to, I was in a room of about 500 entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs. Every single person in this room owned one or more businesses. Every person in this room, was making $500,000 to multi-millions of dollars every year in these businesses. All of them were, every outside trapping that you could see, people would go, these are successful people. They've got it together. And I asked the question, I said, how many of you have a voice inside your head that talks to you either in words or in pictures, that when you're trying to do something, you've got kind of that internal conversation? Every hand went up. I said, great. I said, now keep your hand up if that voice is nice to you. And every hand went down. Yeah. These are very well accomplished people.
Yeah.
And yet all of them are like, no, internally, I think I'm an idiot. I talk bad to myself. I talk to myself in a way that I would not allow anyone to talk to somebody who I cared about. If you talk to my son the way I talk to myself, man, we got them fighting words. You talk to my wife the way I talk to myself. We're going to have words, right? And yet we do that to ourselves because we carry that internal ego. And more often than not, where it comes from is we judge our present situation with the knowledge we have today and then beat ourselves up for past decisions that we made that we didn't have the knowledge that we do today. In other words, we expect our past self to know something that there's no way you could have known, until you did it, So like, if you looked back on the trucking business and you were like, oh, I'm such an idiot for doing that. How could I have not known that wasn't going to work? Well, how would you have known? You'd never done it before.
Right.
You didn't have the knowledge. Now you know, but then you didn't. And yet if you beat past self up based on knowledge that future self has, you're being unfair. And more often than not, that's kind of what we're doing. We're looking back at our past self and going, oh, I was such an idiot. How could I have not known that XYZ was going to happen? Because you're not God. You don't know everything. And so that's where, I like having the mindset of what we're doing is running experiments. What we're doing is running tests. What we're doing is we're getting data. That earlier I said, I'm trying to make sure I don't use good, bad language because data is not good or bad. It's just information.
Yeah.
What you do with it can create good or bad value, but by itself, it has no value. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just data. Yep. So if you kind of can keep that mindset, then all of a sudden you can begin to experiment no matter where you are and make changes that move you in a better direction at any time.
Yeah. Yeah. That is very true. And I am guilty of what you just described right there. I felt like you were talking to me, because
that makes you human and over the age of about 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. We all do talk down on ourselves and we expect the level that we expect from ourselves is unachievable because once you achieve success, well, then there's
you just move the bar.
Yeah.
It's like,
yep. And so how do you think some of those guys that you were talking to, those successful entrepreneurs, how do you think some of those guys was able to break that cycle of not letting the beat down cause and affect them with their businesses?
They stopped trying to break that cycle. So here's the interesting thing. You don't break it. You lean into it.
Okay.
You learn to dance with it. You accept it as reality, but that doesn't mean you have to give into it.
Right.
Okay. It's the difference between, again, I'm talking to a veteran. It's the difference between when people say, oh, they're brave because they're not afraid. That's bullcrap. It's like, I'm sorry. If there are rockets going off and bullets flying, you're afraid if you're human and you have a brain cell because of course you're afraid.
Yep.
Guess what? Brave is you still did the job you needed to do.
Right.
Even in that moment of extreme fear. It's not the absence of fear. It's action even in the presence. Well, how do you learn that? What do they do with military? Again, when they train, what they're doing is teaching your body and your mind to realize, even when I'm afraid, I'm going to act. Now, it doesn't work always perfectly. I mean, obviously, people can freeze in those situations and all sorts of negative things can happen. But if you can learn to kind of dance with it. And it's not that you're not afraid, but you can still operate even in that place of fear. The same thing happens with imposter syndrome. The same thing happens with ego. The same thing happens with all of that stuff that breaks us down. Is instead of looking at it as I've got to get rid of this, I've got to fix it because it means there's something wrong with me. No, it doesn't. It means you're human. It comes from a good place, by the way. That voice is trying to protect you. That voice means well. Same thing when that spouse or somebody looks at you and goes, you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
They mean well. They're trying to protect you. They're trying to keep you from being hurt.
Yep.
But sometimes that's not the right advice. And so you've got to learn to hear it, to recognize it, to greet it almost. Hey, thank you for showing up. I know that voice means to protect me, but you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to push through it and I'm going to do it anyway. And again, this is where having other people in your life can help, because sometimes if you have the right community, band of brothers, right?
Yep.
Again, if you're military and you're on your own, nobody else is with you, it's a very different experience than when you're in with your buddies and you're all together, because
absolutely
it's not the same, because community helps lift up everybody, in good ways and bad. It can work both ways, but it's done right. It helps lift and move everybody in a better direction. So it's the same thing. You've got to learn to dance with it, and you've got to learn to understand it and accept it, but not fight it or break it or overcome it. I honestly think using that kind of verbiage is bad, because it almost makes it stronger, because then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, other people can overcome this. Why can't I? And it just becomes one more thing in that list of litany of things you can't do that others can do. I'll tell you this. I've talked to some really successful people. They all have imposter syndrome. They all have fears. They all have doubts. They all have all of those same things that you do. They just learn to operate in it anyway.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because you think about it, that voice isn't anything bad. It's just another person. No. It's a soundboard, right? It's giving you a perspective that's designed to protect you, right? About a topic. And then if you can take that and you can analyze what your inner voice is telling you, and then voice it to your community and get another projection, another sound, a bounce back of what it is that you're about to do, it now gives you multiple perspectives to look at things from different angles. And that by itself is going to protect you.
It's going to be more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's interesting too is neurobiology. So if you look at the brain chemistry, so I've got a scientific background, so I like to look into the actual, what's happening in our brain. The neurochemical signals for fear are identical to the neurochemical signals for excitement. The only difference is the label that we put on, the label we call it. Okay. So us as the person feeling the feeling, we'll say, oh, I'm afraid, or we'll say, oh, I'm excited. But the chemistry, the emotion, the actual stuff that's happening to your body and your brain is identical.
That's interesting.
What that tells me is I can actually relabel that. So I'll give you an example. I love public speaking. I enjoy it. I don't have a quote fear of speaking, because whenever I sense that feeling, I go, I'm excited. I'm not afraid. This is excitement. Okay. Yeah. And that happened because when I started speaking at a pretty young age, I did my first speaking event when I was 12 years old. Someone said, oh, you're excited. Because I told them, my hands are sweaty, they said, oh, you're excited. And I went, oh, okay, this is excitement. This is what this is. I didn't get to label it as fear because nobody told me. It wasn't until I was much later and much older that people went, oh, that's fear. And I'm like, no, I saw it as excitement, because that's what I had learned. And so
Right.
it's not that I don't feel anything. Before I do a speech, I've got all of those jitters that everyone talks about, and the stuff in the stomach, and all of, and the sweaty palms, and all of that same stuff. But in my head, I've learned to go, oh, that must be because I'm excited. And then I lean into it. So it's not always that those signals that we get. Sometimes it's literally learning to label those signals in a way that lets you continue to move forward. It's reframing is the fancy term for it, but it really just means leaning into the feeling for what it is and going, oh, okay. I felt this before. This isn't the end of the world. Because the reason, by the way, most people are afraid of public speaking is because they're afraid that they're going to fail at it, and people are going to make fun of them and socially ostracize them.
Yeah.
That's what they're afraid of. Be honest with yourself. When have you ever attended a speaking event, and if the speaker did something and messed up or something went wrong, you were like, oh, good, now I get to go make fun of them? No, you walk up to him after the event and went, man, dude, so I'm sorry, the projector sucked. That must have made it really hard. You commiserate with them. You're on their side. Guess what?
Yep.
If you're speaking, everyone in the audience is on your side. They don't want you to fail. They want you to succeed. So, but we don't think it through that way. We project this negative thing. And I'm using public speaking just because that is a fear that nearly every person on the planet says they have.
Right.
But again, it could be anything. It could be the fear of launching a new product. It could be that worry about opening a business for the first time. It could be, changing jobs when I'm too old to change jobs. Whatever it is, all of those messages are coming from the same place. And sometimes learning to frame them the right way lets us move through them and move with them, as opposed to quote unquote overcome them.
Right. Yeah. It kind of brings me to the next topic. And I think that's what you're saying kind of leads into that. Would you say that's one of the things that that kind of uncomfortable truth about living your calling is that fact that now you are putting yourself out there and people are going to be looking in and let's face it, people are going to judge, whether it be out of jealousy, out of ego, or out of whatever. You're going to hear good and bad about what you're doing.
And the truth is, you're going to hear good and bad about what you're doing, no matter what you're doing.
Amen. Yep.
So you might as well do the thing that you were put on this planet to do, because somebody's not going to like it. I mean, today's world, you can put out a post that says, this is a picture of grass, and somebody's going to argue with you, and tell you how stupid you are to have posted a picture of grass. It's just the way that, and again, it's in some ways it's worse now, but I don't think it's really worse. I think what it is we have more channels now.
Yeah.
In other words, used to, if you put out a picture of grass, you maybe were posting it on the wall, and a few people walked by your house and saw it. It's not like today where it's broadcast to millions.
Right.
So truth be told, if you lean into what you love, you're going to be judged. Yes, somebody's not going to like it. Yes. But if you're coming at it from a place of truly serving others, so you're not doing this out of selfish reasons, you're not doing this out of prideful reasons, you're doing this because it is what you're made to do, and because you love it, and because it shows how you love the world and love other people. And so it's a service-oriented kind of thing. At the end of the day, you'll get more energy from it than will be drained from you by the naysayers. Because it just... I've got a friend who runs a cafe down where we used to live, and she does a ton of work for the community. She has a nonprofit. She feeds kids. She does, all of this work for the community. And it's hilarious because I watch on Facebook that, people just ripping into her about, oh, you must be ripping people off. You must be doing this. You must be doing that. I know this woman. She's not, Now she's a recovered drug addict. So many years ago, she'll tell you, I was addicted to meth and I was a bad person. She's not that person anymore.
So
She's redeemed herself. That's the old person. And here's what's cool. What I find hilarious is, so she just basically she became, quote, an influencer on Facebook. And when these people post these hateful comments, it's interaction on her post that actually makes her money.
Yeah.
And she's like, go ahead, post all you want. She's like, rip into me all you want to. I'm just going to take that money that y'all use and I'm going to put it in the nonprofit. I'm going to go feed some kids.
Yep.
And I'm going to go do this. Somebody will be, oh, how can you give the kids, a cookie instead of, something healthy? She's like, here's my address, show up with the apples and I'll put apples in their basket. I just, don't tell me what's wrong. Come help me fix it.
Yep.
Kind of thing. And it's hilarious because there are people that are so hateful. And again, she's not perfect. That's not the point. And she doesn't do everything exactly perfectly all the time. No, not, there's times that she'll post something and I'm like, that's a little, I probably wouldn't have said that way, but there you go.
Yep.
But at the same time, she's true to who she is.
Yep.
And she's serving the people around her. And the naysayers, she's just kind of learned to harness them. And, it still hurts her feelings, still bothers her, but then she moves on and goes and feeds some more kids.
Yep. I mean, at the end of the day, she's making the community around her better for her being in it than if she wasn't. And
absolutely.
And I think that's truly all we can do as humans is to be willing to go out there and make everybody else better for us to be a part of them. And
I call it the 1% rule. If you can make other people and yourself, by the way, 1% better every day, you're doing more than enough. Okay. Yeah. You don't have to hit it out of the park. If you want, because think about it, no matter what you're doing, you want to lose weight, you lose it 1 pound at a time.
Yep.
You want to start exercising, you learn it, you do it by one run rep at a time.
Yep.
You want to build a business, you do it one customer, one client, one sale, one whatever at a time.
Yep.
If you want to make the world better, you do it one contact, one touch, one person, one reach at a time.
Yeah.
And if you just constantly do that, I want to just make it a little better today than it was yesterday, a little better today than it was yesterday, a little better today than it was yesterday. You'd be amazed at how much progress you can make in a year.
Yeah. I agree.
Most of us want to just change it all instantaneously right now. It's why go to a gym in January, you can't get on a machine. Go the day after Valentine's Day, there's plenty of room. Okay. Because everybody that joined the gym in January, 90% of them aren't showing up in February.
Yep.
They're done. Right. They burned out.
Yep.
Because they wanted to fix it all in one time instead of, no, I'm just going to show up to the gym. I'm going to work out on the treadmill. I'm going to do that again tomorrow. And I'm going to do that again tomorrow. And I'm going to do that. And a week from now, I'm going to be running a little further than I was that first day. And I'm just going to do it every day with consistency, just a little better every day. They'll change their life.
Yeah, I agree 100%. In the military, we call that, every day you improve your foxhole just a little bit every day. And, in my business, building websites is just the beginning part of it. The SEO is the part that, building that traffic to come to your website is that you got to improve it a little bit each day, do something better each day, add new content, make the links better, whatever. There's a lot of steps to it, but at the end of the day, it's not going to happen in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. It's going to be a continuous ongoing project that you need to do every day. And so I agree. Well, Scott, where is it that people can connect with you?
So I actually put together a landing page just for your listeners. They can find a bunch of information over there. If you go over to my website, which is inspiredstewardship.com, and then just put in /scratch.
Okay.
What you'll find there is a link to some free resources that I have that you're welcome to grab and download. There's a button that says Master Stewardship. That'll get them emailed to you. If you scroll down a little bit further, you'll find information about my book. I wrote a book called Inspired Living. Breaks down a lot of these concepts that we're talking about and kind of puts them into a framework for people. So if you're wanting something to read to kind of learn more about what we've been talking about, Inspired Living is a great choice, and you can buy it right there on the page. A little bit further, you'll find out information about my podcast, and there's even a link there where if you wanted to jump on a call and have a conversation about anything you've heard, you're welcome to do that. And again, you can find all of that over at inspiredstewardship.com/scratch.
That is awesome, man. We will make sure that the links are down there in there for all of you guys that are listening. Make sure you go over there, hit the link, go check him out. If you do get his book and you read it, leave a review from wherever you got it, or just go to Amazon and leave a review. You don't have to purchase from Amazon. You can still leave reviews there as well. But anybody that writes a book and they take that time to put that out, they didn't do it because they're going to get rich from it. You know,
no, that's true.
And the best thing we can do to help them is leave that review. So Scott, I appreciate you coming on. I had a great time. You've got tons of great advice for people. And I hope people do check out your link and go check out your site and everything that you're doing over there.
Awesome. Absolutely.
All right. You guys take care, be safe, and we will catch you next time.
You've been listening to Built from Scratch, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their experience, and thank you for listening. Explore more conversations like this across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.